that was Destiny by PJ Morton, and I think it's a great intro to the monthly segment of Covenant Conversations with Alicia Shepherd. Um, that song really talked about love and that to wait, for God to send you the right person to love, that it is your destiny, that He will bless you with that. And Alicia has a very, very special treat for us tonight with Covenant Conversations. So, welcome to Soul Suite. You're a part of the family, but welcome to all the new people with you. How are you today?
Thank you. I am so great, and I'm so excited that you agreed to this for me to bring my lovely, amazing friends. I guess I'll let them each say their names.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Aniyah.
I'm Denise.
And I'm Wakema.
All right.
Kamara.
Hi, Kamara.
And Yvette.
And what was the last
Hi. Yvette.
Yvette. Hi,
Yes.
Yvette. Welcome to Soul Suite. And, who knows? We might be starting something new with Covenant Conversations. So, welcome.
I think so. I'll have to gauge their faces while you say that.
So, thank you so very much. All right, Alicia, we've been waiting for this. What you got for us?
Awesome. Okay, well, I know that Valentine's Day is coming up, so I wanted to do something love-themed. So we're going to be talking about how to survive church dating. And, the reason I brought my friends in on this conversation is because when we get together, we have such great talks about dating and asking questions and just all these really stimulating topics. And I thought it would be great to just make that conversation public, and maybe it'll spark some food for thought. We don't have all of the answers, but we all have experiences. We're all in this boat. Wakema is actually married, so we do have a married woman among us. But, I just think that we are women that people can relate to, and I'm just excited for the discussion.
All right, let's get it going.
All right. I want to make one quick disclaimer, before we ask our first question. And this isn't something that I was really thinking of, and I'm kind of glad it happened. I kind of had a sort of a wake-up call this week, and it's actually kind of a painful wake-up call, just finding out about a friend who's not here on this call, but it reminded me that when we talk about, surviving dating, we're not talking about making it just to the wedding, because there is a lot that goes on after you say I do, and man, I've been reminded of that so strongly in the last, this last week. And so I just want to throw that out there. We're not here advocating, hey, let's just make it to having boyfriends, and then from that, let's make it to engage, and from that, let's make it to the wedding. No, we're here talking about what does it look like for a woman of God to date in a way that's going to lead to a God-honoring marriage that lasts beyond the excitement, but beyond the 500 likes on your Facebook post when you change your status. We're looking at real life, long term. So just want to throw that out there so that we have some perspective.
Got it.
So I'll throw out our first question. We have a few that we're going to discuss. The first, just so we're all on the same page, is how is Christian dating different from dating in the world? Does anybody have thoughts on that?
I think the biggest difference is that you're doing this with abstinence. You're not having a sexual relationship, and that can present a lot of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
I would definitely agree with that, what Denise said about challenges. I mean, I think sometimes people think that celibacy is easy. It is. No. Okay. Talk about that. Someone doesn't want to explain how much she's saying amen to that struggle, but
that is a huge
I mean, not that big, when you're living your life for Christ and, you put your priorities in order and you know what you want. Is your flesh more important or is pleasing God more important? You definitely, get a chance to really test where you are in your walk and how committed you are. So I would say, yes, I did give an amen to that, but pardon me.
And it's especially difficult if it's a door that you've already opened.
Correct.
And you've started out with sexual relationships and you're trying to do it right now. It tends to be very difficult.
Very difficult.
So are we saying that the only thing that's different from Christian dating or worldly dating is abstinence?
That's a good point. I don't think so.
I don't think
Definitely
so.
not.
No.
It's big, but I don't know. I don't think it's the same.
I think in a lot of ways it's more of a courtship because the end goal is marriage. So as far as when it comes to dating in the world, you might be dating in a more recreational sense or in a more casual way.
Right.
But when you are dating as a Christian, the goal is to get married. And a lot of the activities are different than dating in the world. I mean, putting yourself back to the abstinence point, putting yourself in a position of being alone a lot or in an environment where that could kind of spark those desires even more is different than dating in the world. Whereas in the dating in the world, romantic comedies or magazines, everything is kind of catered around sexual activity or the desires of the flesh. So, dating as a Christian, you come up with more creative ideas, I think, in ways to date.
More than just Netflix and chill, then
basically.
basically.
Yeah, and it's actually almost not necessarily an expedited process, but because you're focused on so many other aspects of the person, it really does kind of put you in the lane of whether this is really serious or is this okay, this is not gonna work work out permanently.
I agree. I think that focus is a huge factor. What we're focused on, are we focused on God? I know when I was dating in the world, I wasn't really thinking, I thought about God, I loved God, but he really wasn't my focus when I was dating, focusing on whether or not this person is a good match for me and what God has in mind for my life and for that guy's life, whether or not I'm a good helpmeet for him. That's not really been the focus when I'm dating in the world. So that's a big difference for me for dating in the world and Christian dating.
One thing that I find different between Christian dating and dating in the world is with Christian dating, a lot of times before we get to know the person, we're already trying to determine whether or not that person is our husband. And
do you feel like that's good or bad? Like we're being too deep
that's
about it,
terrible.
or we're being wise?
Yeah, I think that's rushing a process that is a process.
That's interesting. I think that can be true. Like we can make it too deep. Like, oh, is that person my husband? Or like, a new guy comes to the church and then everybody's like, oh, God is answering all my prayers right now.
God told me.
So I do think that happens.
Right.
On the flip side, though, I think that if we can kind of like learn how to assess, I hate to say assess, but evaluate the options before we're in a deep romantic situation, I do think that helps. Like just from friendship, not from like fantasy and your mind rushing, but I don't know, because once you open that door and you say you're in a relationship, it is that struggle gets real.
Yeah. I feel like definitely taking the time to get to know the person is so important. I mean, all of you know the guy that I've been talking to. We've been talking for nearly 4 months, 3 to 4 months.
Hey.
And only recently made it a relationship commitment, but we took the time to get to know one another, which is something that I wasn't used to, especially in my worldly dating. I was not used to a man taking his time to get to know me and actually, let me get to know him. there's still a lot to learn. I think that even when you're married sometimes you can still be learning about a person, but it is appreciated. I think a man of the world is not really going to take that time to, get to know you, whereas a Christian man is going to. And so moving on to question number 2, how do you meet men when there are no available men in your church?
I think that's such a good
That's a good one.
I have an answer too.
Oh.
I think that we put a lot of expectation on, when we're Christians, we put a lot of expectation on the men in our church. And we actually kind of limit ourselves. There are other churches everywhere. I met my husband. We were at different churches, actually. We were brought together at a barbecue by mutual friends. So I think as long as you're open and you're doing a lot of activities, and you might have Christian friends near and far, and you're just a part of social gatherings, that could help, because not every church has a very sound and established singles ministry. So if you're just looking within your church or environment, you might cut yourself off of opportunities for meeting people that, live in other parts of the Bay Area or other parts of California. So that might be a way to find some.
I agree. I think meeting people through friends is the best way to meet men.
Yeah. I've done that before. Okay, I don't know if this is sad, but
Already sad.
I once just wrote down, like, who have I dated in my life, and I made a list of don't clown me. No, I was curious, and I was like, how did I meet them? And I wanted to see if there was a recurring theme. And I felt like mutual friends was kind of a recurring theme.
Yeah.
So how do you guys feel about online dating for Christians then?
Online dating has been very difficult for me.
Yeah, God.
I have not gotten to the in-person date.
Oh, yeah. He got cut up in the question phase.
I feel like you can get duped a lot when you date online. Like, you have an expectation kind of, or you see a person, and then people always put their best foot forward, especially when they're not, visible. And it's just when you get with them in person, they can be a completely different person than what you experience. I have not done online dating, but I've heard some experiences where I'm just like, oh no, I don't even know how that happened.
As a Christian single, do you tell other people that your other Christian friends that you're open to dating, or do you just allow it to happen?
No, I absolutely think you communicate that to your friends.
Agreed.
That there should be intentional gatherings where people are put in a situation where they can interact and meet.
Do you guys allow anybody to set you up or introduce you?
I absolutely would. I think having a mutual friend or a person that knows me and the other person would be a great setup. Yeah.
That's actually how I got into the relationship that I'm currently in, is a mutual friend, and it was completely a setup.
Okay. Then I need to pray about it, because the Christian people who introduce me to men, I'm like, you don't know me, or you're
yes,
not.
amen. That is
they gotta know you. They have to know
That's
you.
my testimony.
I think that's definitely a big caveat, is that it has to be somebody that you trust and that that knows you and what you're looking for. Like, I've had people who are non-Christians who tried to hook me up with other non-Christians, and it's kind of like, well, we've had conversations about my faith, and yet you're still trying to hook me up with people who are like completely the opposite of what I'm looking for. So I really take to heart, though, when those people at church who are like, oh, I think I know somebody. I'm like, yes, bring them.
Yeah.
I've had experiences with being in, Christian friends introducing me to a Christian man, but not like even my type. Like, it's you're single. I'm going to introduce you guys,
You should just be happy to meet another single kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
That happened to me, and my friend did not know this guy. He just saw him in the lobby at church and said, wow, he would be perfect for you, Kamara. And he said, I could tell by the way he looked. He had a job, and he looked nice, and he thought he would be perfect. Of course, that didn't get beyond the first date. I thought that he knew him, but when I asked after the date, the blind date didn't work out. I asked him if he knew him, and of course he did not.
Okay.
I think that's really important, and that actually brings us into question number 3, which is, what are the risks involved with dating within your own congregation, and how can you minimize the damage of a possible breakup? And then also, do we frown on dating multiple people at the same church?
That is such a hot topic.
It depends on how deep you allow your relationship to go. Like,
yes.
Again, it goes along with taking the time to get to know a person. That courting, I didn't know it, again, until recently, but it is very important so that you're not calling yourself, in a relationship too soon. So, and I think before, Alicia, you had said, that you don't let it go too far so that you can still say that, this is my brother or sister in Christ. This is like on a previous.
Yes, right.
I think a big factor is also, we have to remember, as Christians, we need God in every stitch and nook and cranny of
facet.
What we're doing. Yeah, exactly. So that right there is really our safety net, and not going too far or, this or that, and just having discernment, I think, really can prevent just not necessarily dating around, but like Aniyah said, going further, kind of keeping it at a point where if you didn't go that far, or far enough to say that you were in a really deep relationship, you can afterwards at least still say, well, that is my friend, and go in the direction God has you go in.
It comes along with also guarding your heart.
Yeah, definitely.
That's important as well. So if you are guarding your heart as you should be, then I don't see any reason why, dating within your congregation should be a huge problem.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think that there should be some kind of discretion? Maybe you should be discreet in the early stages
Yeah.
of dating?
That helps because, well, I tend to be discreet only because when I feel like when you're single and you're in the church, once people know that you're dating someone, they're like, hallelujah! They're like, yes! Like, God came through for her. Where's the wedding? And it's like,
and they're automatically marrying you.
Yeah,
that was
it's
my
too
point
much
before.
pressure.
You could be dating 2 weeks and you're automatically getting married because now you're exclusively dating.
Yeah. And then if it doesn't work out, that's so many more people that you have to tell. But on the flip side, I don't believe in it being secret. Because I've been in those situations where somebody was like, okay, don't nobody need to know that we talking. I'm like, that's a little
Yeah,
funny.
exactly.
When I'm dating, my inner circle knows, my family knows, important people know, but not the masses.
Right.
But at that point where if you're dating someone within your congregation, or, you have invited that person to church and you sit together. And when you sit together, that's already first red flag. That something's up, and people start talking. So that's kind of where I said that maybe there should be some kind of discretion.
Right.
Then you have to have friends like us, or we just camouflage them. We just with the group.
Yes, right.
Yeah. But I like the fact that you said it's good that your inner circle knows, not just anybody, but your inner circle, because sometimes when you're in that love bubble and getting to know somebody, and even though we're trying to guard our hearts, there's a temptation to, kind of fantasize a little bit. Absolutely. So it's good to have people in your inner circle who are kind of seeing without that love bubble on their eyes, you know what I mean, the rose-colored glasses. They can see things, and they can, pray with you and just be there for you to talk to and to listen to you and to help you with discernment if God is leading them to.
Yeah. And also help with accountability, which is a big thing
Exactly.
in a godly relationship.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you know what? I agree with that as well, and it kind of goes back to, the Christian dating, the difference in it, because I do feel like you give yourself more emotionally in Christian dating versus
Agreed.
worldly dating. So it's very easy to kind of fast forward that relationship
Right.
really quickly,
I think that's
especially.
why the basis of a friendship is so important.
I think it's interesting because I feel like in the world we do more fast. In a sense, we're doing more fast forward dating. We're not really doing the kind of investments and investigating that we are talking about doing right now in this conversation. I think we're jumping into, okay, they're attractive, I'm attractive. Oh, they can play tennis, I could play tennis. Cool, let's get together. The next thing you know, they're in a sexual relationship, and it doesn't really go much further than that. The kind of dating that we're talking about, it's really, like you said, becoming friends, because the majority of the relationships that I had while I was in the world, I can look back on it and say the reason why I have not kept those friendships is because they never were friends. We were together for years, but we were never really friends. I don't really feel like I walked away with that person really knowing the heart of me. So.
I don't know if I agree with you 100%. I found that a lot of Christian relationships are really fast, and a lot of people rush into marriage so that they can justify having sex, and that is why the divorce rate is almost the same in the church as it is in the world. And I think it sounds nice, but is that the reality of what's happening? And I think we haven't gotten to that question yet, but I'll wait to get into that. But I think that's an issue that isn't discussed.
That's true. You know what? And I think that's why we have to be careful, in this whole conversation. I think it really boils down to how you choose to date, because you could be a Christian, but you could date in a worldly manner, or you could be,
right.
Or you could even be in the world, not Christian, but you still are a type of person that wants to take their time.
Practice
so
celibacy.
I think it depends on your practices.
Yeah.
Right. Agreed, 100%.
That leads us to another question. Do we over-fantasize what a godly spouse will look like? And do we set ourselves up for something that does not really exist?
Yes. Definitely yes, because I have higher expectations of Christians just in general, and we are still people, we are still flawed, and I forget that when I'm dating a Christian man, and I expect him to be my everything and just perfect, and it's me, him, and God in there with us, and I set myself up for disappointment because he's not perfect. He's still a person, and he still has a lot of the same struggles that worldly men do.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll be honest. So I asked this question. This is Alicia speaking, and I asked it because not only have I dated in the church, I've dated people in ministry, and I just feel like sometimes, it's easy for us to be told, or we read books about, our Boaz and all this stuff, and then you get into the relationship, and then a lot of times, like, the disconnect boils down to stuff like communication or being loving, or, it's dealing with the person when they're not at their best. Because, like, who can't make it work with somebody whose prayer life is on point, always in a good mood, always understanding you, always listening? Like, I just don't know if we always prepare ourselves for the reality of somebody, like, sometimes being in their flesh. I mean, I think we should strive to marry someone that's going to put God first, and they're going to get back on track if they're, off track. But can we deal with that in between? That's kind of where I would come from.
Yeah. I think I might have had a different perspective. When I was younger, I come from a family where my grandfather is a pastor, my great-grandfather, my uncle, and I still saw flaws, and I still saw godly men up and down the radar, where you have some that are really exemplary, and then you have others that seem worse than non-Christian men. So I had two kind of compartmental ideals. I had the godly, the fantasy, and then I also had the reality. And so what I did was, before getting married, I prayed about understanding that I will be flawed and that he will be flawed, and how to reconcile those feelings. I knew when I was single that there were some needy things about my personality, and I wasn't fit to be be with anybody because I would be looking to them to fill those needs. So I purposely stayed single until God was my satisfaction. And when talking to my now husband, we were dating stages, we did get married probably sooner than a lot of people do, but it wasn't just for certain benefits of marriage. It really was because we wanted to start our lives together, and it was because we were ready for that level of commitment. And I think you need to kind of be prayerful about what you're expecting, and to be a whole person when you do enter into that kind of covenant, because marriage, we think of it as catering to us, like, oh, we're not going to be lonely anymore, we're going to have somebody to love us, we're going to have this and that, but what do you bring to the table? You know, what expectation are you bringing forth? And it's just very important. You actually learn more about yourself. And it's like a mirror is put on you, and God's saying, ooh, these are things you need to fix. You're not forgiving in that area, because when your husband does this, you kind of, hang it over his head. So, sorry, I'm kind of like going all over the place. I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place. But I'm just saying, like, I think the initial, it starts with fantasizing, and that's where you get let down. If you kind of go into understanding you're going to be with another flawed person, you're going to be with somebody striving to pray every day, to be godly, to pray for you, and you pray for them, then it'll look more of like a journey as teammates. So
I do really like your point about the prayer, that just to remember that we ourselves are not perfect.
I think we get caught up in that a lot as single women. Sometimes I think that there's like this trend of like, I'm not going to settle, this is what I'm waiting for, and this is I'm worth it. It's like, okay, yeah, but what are we bringing to the table? Are we meeting that same, So
and just remember
now.
Oh, sorry. Just remember to let God be your knight in shining armor, because when God, we're all just flawed. There are times when my husband might disappoint me or I might disappoint him, and then I just talk to God about it privately, and then I talk to him, and then we pray about it together. But I go to God with my broken heart, when He's not able to hear me correctly. And I think just always keep the fantasy about your spiritual life intact, and then knowing that everything around you is going to be unpredictable.
What does I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
What is that whole feeling, that God being your knight in shining armor? What is that place? Because in between just the yearning, for a mate that God puts within us, as well as the fantasy, because we're waiting, we're holding on, and we're doing things a different way, and it can take longer. How do you really identify that place that in your relationship with God where okay, I'm ready. God is my everything. Can you explain that?
Well, for me, for several years, I prayed for satisfaction in Christ. And what that meant was a lot of times I was getting disappointed by family, friends. I just kept revisiting that place, and so I finally just said, God, I really need to be satisfied in you. So when I'm lonely or when I'm going through certain things, I would pray more. I would go to scriptures that would cater to those feelings. I would let my heart break in front of God and be completely vulnerable, in hopes of being able to do that someday with my husband. But I had to practice that with God because I didn't know how to do that. And I certainly didn't know how to do that with people, because people hurt you over and over, and you build up like a guard. You kind of, callous your heart. You don't soften it. So I had to soften it to God, and it was simply a prayer. I just would repeat it over and over until I believed it, until God showed me that it was real. Because in the beginning, it wasn't real. It felt superficial, like, okay, yeah, I'm satisfied in God. But no, you had to keep saying those words and really being, really wanting it, and really being vulnerable to God.
Okay, before you respond, I need to do my station ID, so hold on for 15 seconds.
You're listening to 98.3 FM, WRLR LP, Round Lake High School.
Okay, we're back.
I would say that for me, I'm still growing in my relationship with the Lord, but where it comes from is kind of like knowing that no matter what I do and no matter who I am, I'm still loved and accepted by Him. Like, that is helping me to really open up and break down the barrier and, you know, just realize that He's going to love me in spite of. So, you know, no matter what I have done or what I'm going to do, I can always find my strength and who I am in Him. So that's kind of where I am in my growth and in my relationship with Him.
And if I could add something to that, man, and this is coming from a place of humility and just like transparency, is like, because so when I was 22 years old, I thought, oh, I am ready for marriage, okay? Like, I just knew that I was ready and that I was going to be one of those people that got married young. And then I ran into, you know, some situations, and I think we're going to get into this in the next question, but just into relationships where I saw more of my weaknesses. And so I would encourage, especially if you're listening and you grew up in the church or you feel like, yeah, I have a strong relationship with God. Yeah, you have a strong relationship with God. You have a strong relationship with a perfect being. You don't know what kind of flaws you have until you have to work it out with another person. And I think sometimes we don't even realize the kind of insecurities we have, because it's like, oh no, I know Proverbs 31. I know I am fearfully and wonderfully made. But there's a different kind of insecurity that can happen when your heart is tied up in someone who has free will. That is another kind of insecurity, because you don't know, you know, it's like you find yourself, you know, he didn't text me back, and then you're going crazy, and now you got a crazy attitude, now he thinks you're crazy. You know, it's like you just don't.
Nothing happened.
Right, nothing happened. He just took a nap, and you're like, you broke up, got back together. Yes. Exactly. So I would just encourage, you know, especially if you're one of those women, you're like, oh, I'm ready, you know, just stay open to your own growth, because there is more. And I would also say, and I don't know if this is, I guess, free advertising, but I read an excellent book that has changed my life. It's called Keep Your Love On by Danny Silk. I'll repeat it. It's called Keep Your Love On by Danny Silk. That book messed me up, and I think it really speaks to wholeness, and it'll show you, like, if you have control issues. You could be the most docile person, and after reading that book, you're like, oh, my God, I have crazy control issues. So I think that book helps get into the nitty-gritty, like, if you're not dating someone right now. But anyway.
I do have a question. I'm coming from a perspective of being an older single person, never been married, knocking on 50, and I had to make peace with my singleness. Have any of you ladies experienced making peace with your singleness?
For me, that tied into being satisfied with God, in God. I had to finally, I think my motives for wanting someone weren't altogether holy or appropriate, and so that's why I had to really, I felt like God was telling me, you know, one day He just said, why do you want a husband? And my list was all about catering to me, and, oh, I was lonely, or I needed love, or I needed this, or, you know, I was trying to be dateless, or, you know, because I had I had some immature reasons, you know, years ago, and so I prayed to be happy and whole in my singleness, and then God opened the door for me to see other things that marriage holds, and to pray for those things, and not for just what I wanted out of it, but what we can build together in the future. And because your coming together is contingent. I mean, there's so many factors that other people are. I mean, your future offspring, you know, your ministry, you know, a lot of things are affected. So, being whole in your singleness, I think, is key as an initial jumping off point.
Absolutely. It's very necessary, and I know for me, in my experience, I just knew I was going to be married at 23, and I didn't really see myself other than somebody else's wife. And I did the serial monogamous thing, just dating back to back, and I did not know how to be single. And at some point, I told myself I'm just going to take a year to get to know me as myself, by myself, and take some time to be single. And in that time, I got a deeper relationship with God. I did get to know me, but it took me 9 months to even figure out how to be single and enjoy it. So I did decide to do another year after that, and I started making some very good friends and just enjoying the single life. And it doesn't mean that I was acting all kinds of crazy. That means I was enjoying my me time, being by myself, making good friends, and learning how to be a friend also in the process.
For me, I love God, and I believe that He knows what's best for me. And I like Psalms 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. So I felt like, the more that I love God and the more that I spend time with God, then He would, if it's His desire for me, then, I would desire marriage. If that's not the desire that God has for me, then He wouldn't put that in my heart. And I have peace knowing that God is leading and directing me. And, honestly, there are so many single women in the church that may not ever, so get married. And God knows what's best for everybody, and that's what makes Him so great. So you have to have peace in knowing that God is, directing our path and giving us the desires of our hearts.
Yeah, I love that. Do you think that sometimes, when we're in relationships, that we sabotage them with negative traits like, being overly aggressive, or, we were even talking before about the whole, being an independent woman and how men feel about that. Do you feel like, ladies, that we sometimes sabotage our relationships?
Definitely do.
Okay, so how do you think we sabotage, what do you think are the primary things that we do to sabotage them, and what can we do instead? Does anyone have thoughts on that?
I think when you don't understand something fully, you inadvertently sabotage it. So think back when you were in high school and you didn't understand an assignment, and you really didn't know how to rise to the occasion of completing what was necessary for the assignment, right? Because you didn't understand it from the beginning. So for me personally, I thought I knew men, and I didn't. And I didn't have any brothers. I really didn't have any male friends growing up. There weren't really any men around in my family. Like, there were men in my family, but they weren't around in close relationships. So I learned what I thought, or who I thought men were, based on the media and movies and what they liked. And, hey, it's the truth. I didn't realize this until, a little bit, until I met my husband, really. But I thought I knew what men liked. I read articles. I did, and I really didn't understand the inner workings of a man and how they think. And so I sabotaged myself. I've always been, quote-unquote, independent, and I cloaked that title over aggression, over anger issues, over control. And anytime a guy was like, oh, you just don't, or anytime I thought a guy didn't like me, I would say, oh, you just don't like me because I'm independent. But I didn't think of the other factors. Maybe I was just mean. Maybe, maybe I was just controlling, or maybe I was this or that. And I think independence on its own is probably attractive, but it's everything else that comes with it that could, turn off a guy. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, I think we were previously saying that, we've learned that a good number of men like to take the lead role. They like to be, the man and do things, on their own, plan things or whatever it is. And yielding to that, even before, marriage is tough when you've been single for so long and you've had to make your own way and make your own plans and do your own thing. It's like, how do I just let a man come and, be a man? That's not always very easy.
So would you guys say it's a telltale sign, though, because there are men who just don't have the training, I guess you would say, to be that man, to take that initiative, to plan that date, to, you know what I mean, go out of his way to do those things that we, really is their role.
I think that, I mean, every man is different, but in my experience, when men say, like, taking the lead, it's not always things like that. Like, sometimes they want your input if they're, and I feel like they'll give hints, like, oh, I'm not really the romantic type. Like, what do you like? I feel like that's their way of saying, oh, okay, he needs a little help, planning this. And so I think that that's okay when we sense, based on that, because not every man's going to have the same kind of temperament or personality. But I think it comes down to more like root level, like respect. If he feels respected, then if you're making a suggestion about a date that may not, rub him the wrong way. And I say that, and I'm gonna give y'all one more book. I love books, but it's called For Women Only, and I might butcher the pronunciation of her name, but I think it's Shanti Feldhahn. But it's called For Women Only. That book really revolutionized my thinking, because I think we're taught in church, women want love and men want respect, but we don't know when they say men want respect. We don't always know what that means and what that looks like in detail. She breaks that down in detail, and you're like, oh, and I feel like I'm still practicing, to be honest. Like, definitely,
absolutely.
Still practicing.
Life is full of learning. You never know it all.
Yeah. Wakema said For Men Only is good. That's written by her husband.
I believe so. And I read that one too.
Oh, okay.
To get perspective on what men are reading, so that I can further understand what they need.
Now, I want to kind of segue to another topic. Do you think that, I'll say this first. How early do you talk about celibacy when you're dating? And do you think that there is a stereotype that women in the church are sexually conservative?
I will say, I'll be the first. In each and every one of my potential relationships since I've gotten closer and developed my relationship with the Lord, I pretty much disclose that information right away, because, one, you can weed out a lot of men and letting them know immediately, look, I know you like what you see, honey, but there will be none of that. And then you get the ones that, are willing to take the time and invest and say, okay, then this might be worth exploring because they're on the same page. But then you get the guys that kind of feel like it's a challenge, and it's like, okay. So you're able to weed those out. It does result sometimes in time wasted, but I think it's best to let someone know from the beginning that, the expectation is set that there will be no fraternizing. You know what I mean?
Amen, Aniyah.
I'm on the same page with disclosing that information sooner rather than later. For me, I don't want to waste my time with somebody who's not on the same page, and not all Christians date as Christians should. And, there's that third date rule, and by the time they take you out 3 times, they think something is going to go down, and let's just not set him up for disappointment. And so, but what I have learned is that if you just say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and I get a lot of me too, and I find out me too is not actually accurate. They're not really, they just know what I need to hear.
It's not a me too.
To present that is, how important is sex to you in a relationship? And that gives them the opening to either say this is not what's going to happen because I'm abstinent right now, or to say it's super important and I can't wait for later, and then you know how to respond.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, yeah, because I think that I know in my experience, I've seen the same thing. I've seen guys who they're saying that they're on the same page, but then in the end, they're really not. I've heard from guys that they've been told by Christian women, like, this is my standard, and this is the way I date. And then later on in the relationship, the female actually becomes more of the aggressor. So I can see a lot of mixed signals, and in Christian dating, there's a lot of mixed signals and a lot of, just changes in the way that people see Christian women and Christian dating. So I think that's definitely a challenge. But I agree with them that you need to put it out there right away. Just avoid any kind of confusion down the line.
Yeah, you know what, and Yvette, I'm so glad you said that because, we often talk about, celibacy and that is so crucial. I really do believe in that, and, a lot of people know that it's my testimony that, I'm waiting till marriage. But I think the truth is that it is hard, and I do think sometimes you get into situations where you do go too far, and I don't really think that's a big conversation in the Christian world. I don't know if I just stepped on toes or pushed the envelope too much, but I do think that happens because if you're like, okay, we're gonna kiss, and then you're kissing, and then one day, hands went too far. That happens.
There's a lot of
it happens.
People, a lot of single parents in church.
Yeah, and so I just think that I'm learning that it's important when we're having that conversation with the guy to maybe say, I don't know, maybe we could think of how to say it, but be honest about the fact that it's difficult and that you're relying on the grace of God and work together to come up with how you're plan to succeed. So how are we going to set ourselves up for success? That way he doesn't think, oh, she's just good and she would never, that's just so easy for her. No, because I don't know who that's true for. I have so many virgin friends. I don't know who that's true for. Like where it's just so easy and you could be in any situation. It's just not like that. And, there have been times where I even feel like I've missed the mark, even though I haven't, had sex. And that's just being honest. And, I just don't want people listening to something that's not true, real or true or authentic. So I think, and even though I am a proponent of doing as little as possible for multiple reasons, but I think maybe, having the conversation of how are we together as a couple getting to know each other, how are we going to come up with a plan for success and set ourselves up right.
I like that.
That's what we did. We sat down and we were like, 10 o'clock, we can't be together anymore. And it can only go so far, and we have to keep each other accountable because sometimes it'll be me who's out, sometimes it'll be him. But we both know that we have respect for one another, each other. So it's like, I know that he wants to grow in his relationship with the Lord. He knows that I do. So we don't ever want to be the reason that, we take each other out of God's will. So that is so important, and it helps so much. So, definitely sitting down and having that conversation is key.
Yeah. And I think what helps with me personally is I'm a pretty blunt person, and what I appreciate about my husband is that he understands that my bluntness isn't always just like coming from a mean place. I'm just coming from a truthful place. And so I was pretty blunt, like I think the first or second date or so, as a joke, I was like, well, this is a Christian thing, like, what's good, right? And he was just like, it, and we really didn't have to touch on it too much after that. It was just kind of like unsaid that that's just what it was. If we got to marriage, which we both pretty much knew, like early on that it would, that we were just, waiting after marriage. And I think we didn't talk about it too much because I feel like whatever you kind of vocalize, you just kind of put it out there, the energy out there. So instead, we just constantly did group things. We did a lot of things outside. We tried to, like, I don't think I kissed him till like the 7th date because, the stereotype of fear, the question that you said about women being conservative, I don't find myself to be too conservative. So, if we're going to be smooching and stuff before, I just think that kind of opens up a box that needs to stay closed until marriage. So, right. Throw the key.
You don't want these
somewhere.
problems.
Right. And so for me, it was easier to like not talk about it as much, but we did focus on other things, and it left room to talk about, what are your expectations in marriage in terms of finances, in terms of roles? Like, do you see yourself in a traditional, marital role? Or do you think we should cross paths? Do you want to cook sometimes? Do you want to do laundry? Or do you want me to do? It just really opened up the door to really get to the nitty-gritty. So by the time we did get married, it didn't feel like we were just getting married just to get the benefit of sex. It felt like we were really coming together as a partnership. And, it all. I think you just find what works for you, and what works for you as a couple. Every couple is different, and
I like that, Wakema.
Yeah.
And one thing that I found to be very important, and that I learned in going from doing things the world's way to doing things the more Christian way, is when you can't have makeup sex, you actually have to work these problems out, and that's huge. Sometimes you find out you aren't exactly where you thought you were, and sometimes you find out you're not with somebody that can handle the problems that they need to be able to handle. That's a huge learning thing, and that's something, that opportunity is lost when sex is on the table.
So good.
I think it was I think it was really kind of interesting when I was initially faced, a lot of you guys know about this, when I was initially faced with actually coming out and telling somebody that, this is my lifestyle, like I'm not going to have sex until I get married, even though that was a Christian guy. But at any rate, I felt like there was a hesitation on my part initially when I started dating as a Christian dater. It was a hesitation for me to actually be honest up front and say, hey, this is my lifestyle, this is how I'm living, this is, God is very important to me, so this is the way I plan to date. And I think for a lot of people, we don't realize that when you feel that hesitation, it's time to really sit back and reflect on what's keeping me from a testimony like that. Like, God has changed my life so much that I want to keep myself pure until marriage. So what's keeping me from that testimony? Like, what's keeping me and holding that from me, from being honest up front? Is it caring about what people think about me? And these are all things that we have to deal with as a Christian in general. So I think it's good to remember to reflect on that if you're starting to feel that pushback. Like, I don't want to be that honest. I want somebody to like me. No guy's going to want to be with me. Really reflect on what's keeping you from that testimony.
SuiteLady, I know that you've been so gracious. You gave us more time than we usually have. But I hope that this talk has been, beneficial to people listening, and that we can all keep ourselves encouraged as we keep traveling this path.
Absolutely. I wanted to say, the conversation was so great, so I didn't kind of chime in, but I'm already getting responses from people saying they want you to come back. They really, really enjoy the conversation.
Yay!
That's awesome.
Of course we'll come back.
You know what? And some of the responses that I'm getting is this is the conversation that I'm having with my friends. Several people said that amongst their group of friends, some are celibate, some have not quite got to that point, but they're trying. They've been celibate and failed. But this was such an honest conversation to help them to try again as well.
Yes. Amen.
We have the same mixture.
Absolutely. And that it feels like an honest conversation that you would be having with your friends. And I haven't dated in a really, really long time, and I'm older. I haven't started dating. So this is actually helping me whenever I start back dating again.
Preparation.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years for me, and I'm feeling as if I'm in that place where
Amen.
I start dating again, but it's going to be a new venture into dating. So I really think I'm just putting this out here, Alicia, and for all you guys, and you can discuss it. I like covenant conversations and want to keep covenant conversations. If you guys would like to maybe come back periodically an additional week and have this conversation, I would love to.
Awesome.
That is wonderful.
Very cool.
The response has been amazing.
I'm so excited to hear
I'm
that.
very excited. I'm
Very
very
happy.
excited. This was fun.
Yeah.
This was really, really good.
I thought I was like, this is something I would listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh.
I think I would be trying to call in if I wasn't.
Right.
Absolutely. And we have to work that out too. We have to work that out and get it to a point where they're not just listening, that, we can get them to call in as well.
With questions, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Or, to share, their testimonies and their journeys. But this has been great. Great
Thank
conversation.
you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Alicia, for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks, Alicia.
My pleasure. Awesome.
Thank you, Sweet Lady, for having us. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. Closing remarks, Alicia?
Oh man, there's so much that we talked about. You know what? I'll post it for people who, for who missed the beginning, so that you can go back. But closing remarks, I'll just say a quick prayer that God would prepare us, men and women alike listening, that we would seek to honor Him first, and seek to partner with people who honor Him first. That He continue to give us wisdom, that we'd be open to that wisdom, that, anyone who's discouraged, that God would encourage their heart, give them the strength to continue to wait, and that we would just keep our bond strong, so that we can keep spurring each other on to good works, as the Bible says. Keep this wisdom in front of us, keep accountability, and give us strength in this celibacy journey. Yes. Amen.
Thank you so much. This was phenomenal conversation. I really, really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see what we come up with moving forward.
Awesome. Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.